demo from yesterday that we were working on, and I've decided we're going to go ahead and continue using this demo. So once we complete login and reg today, tomorrow we'll actually sort of integrate these two things. So we already had the movies, and then today we'll build out this user component, and then tomorrow we'll connect them both. All right. But just for today, we're going to focus on users. All right, so what I want to do is I also want to build a user class for this because we want to have some users. Come down here and let's do class user. Again, it inherits from models.model. Oh shoot, my bad. Yeah. Okay, there we go. All right, so we're just going to have some basic stuff. We're going to have a first name and a last name, right? Standard. And that's going to be the old models.char field. Okay, maybe we'll say max length on that equals 255. I'll duplicate that, and then we'll make last name. All right, let's have an email address. Email field. Okay. And then what else are we going to need in order to be able to log somebody in or register them? So I'm creating a new user. I want their first name, last name, and email. What else do I want from them? A password, right? I need to have some way to actually log them in. All right. So let's just create a password, and that will be models.char field. We'll say the max length on that is 64. Oops, equals 64. Okay, and then I'm going to have my timestamps, again, created at and updated at. That's standard stuff. Cool. All right, now what we're going to want to do is we're going to want to set up our validations on this, right? Because we know we really don't want to create a user if they haven't provided us the first name or last name or any of that stuff. We want to make sure that it's all provided. All right. Do you guys remember how we're going to create this validator? Yeah, we're going to make a user manager. So let's say class user manager, and then that's going to inherit from what? The manager class. Okay? So inside here we're going to have our little validator function, which is just going to validate whatever the form input was. So we'll say def basic validator. Okay, that'll always take in self, and then we're going to take in some kind of post data that comes in from the form. Okay, and then inside that function, I'm going to create this errors dictionary, right? And then we're going to basically go through our conditions one by one. So let's start with the first name, right? So if len of post data, first name is less than 1, then that means we know we got an empty first name, right? Okay, so let's just say errors, first name equals please provide your first name. Right? And then I'm just going to duplicate this for last name. Whoops, not like that. Just going to grab both these lines, duplicate it there. I'm also going to do it for email as well. So down in here, let's change this to last. Let's change this to email. Please provide your email. Okay. Now, there's something else on the email that we want to watch out for. What if a person provides us a ill-formed email? So in the email field, they provide us with Bob or something like that. Do we want to accept this user? No, Bob. I want your actual email address, right? All right, so there are some different ways of handling this, and inside the platform, you'll see we've got this section here called pattern validation. Okay? And that's probably kind of small. Let me see if I can blow that up. All right, so as you guys can see here in bold, regular expression or regex, this is the thing that we can use to ensure that the email that they provided us matched a given pattern, okay? Like the standard sort of pattern that we're expecting for email addresses. So down here, if you look at what we've got in the platform, you can import this RE, which is for regular expressions, and then we can create an email regex, okay, by invoking this compile function. Once we've created that email regex, we can do something like this. If not email regex.match, that specific email that they provided us, then we know that it's not formed correctly, right? All right, so let's incorporate some of this into our validator here. So I'm just going to grab this part right here. And let's come back to where we are. So we know we need to import this RE as it showed there. And then down here inside of our validator, I'm going to make this an else if condition. Okay? So if they provided us an email and it was at least one character, then we're going to go check and make sure that it was the correct length, or it was the correct pattern. So I'm going to say, so my email regex I can actually put somewhere else in my code if I like. I can just put that up here if I want. Okay. And then instead of if not email regex, I'm going to say elif not. Okay? So I'll only even check this condition if I definitely have received some kind of an email, right? We won't even get to that elif here if the email field was empty. Okay? And then let me just, whoops. Okay, I'm just going to eliminate this little comment here, but that's what it's doing. It's just checking to make sure, is this the correct pattern? Okay. Now what's happening here with the squiggly? Does anybody know? Yeah, so check this out. It's saying here, we don't have this variable post data with a camel case. I do have this one, post data with snake case, so I need to replace this. So always be careful when you guys are sort of copying and pasting things from anywhere or from the platform. Make sure that it actually matches the variables that you're working with, right? All right, so let's update that. Post data. Okay, very good. Cool. Now the other thing that we want to check for is we want to make sure that they've provided a password, right? So if they didn't provide a password, same problem here. So I'm just going to grab this one here. So let's say if the length of the password field was less than 1, then we're going to have a password error as well. Please provide your password. Okay? And then one other thing we may do, what if we have like a password confirmation field? Does anybody like those? Well, I mean, but when you're using an app, do you like them? Yeah. Really?
Because I have sausage fingers, so I know I can type things very.
Gosh.
Yeah, it is.
I really do not. No, I mean, that's fine. I just like, it drives me crazy whenever I hit that thing. It's like, oh gosh, I got to confirm my password. Anyway, I use a password manager called LastPass. So I recommend it because remembering, however many different passwords you have, maybe 100 or maybe even 1,000 passwords, that's pretty much impossible for the average human being, right? So something to consider if you don't use a password manager. LastPass does have like a free version that you could use. All right, cool. So if the length of the password was less than 1, then we want to give that kind of error. What if the password did not match our password confirmation field, which we'll create as well? So I can say something like if post data at password, and then we'll just say does not equal post data at pw confirm, then that means we've got a confirmation error, right? So we can say errors at confirmation equals your passwords didn't match. Okay, very good. Is there anything else we wanted to check here? I think that's it, right? We got first, last, email. We checked the passwords there, and then we check to make sure that they match as well. Okay, so what do I want to do at the end of the validator function?
Return errors?
Yeah, we want to return errors, right? It's this dictionary that now has all this information. I mean, it might have nothing in it if we have no errors, but potentially it has our errors inside of there. Okay, so let's return it out. Good. All right, now, I haven't yet migrated our user class, right? So I'm going to need to do that. So let's get into our shell here, or not our shell, just our regular shell. It's not the Django shell right now, right? Okay, but you'll see my environment's still activated, so that's good. What's the first thing I need to do to make this table ready for use? Migrate's not the first thing. Make migrations, right? All right, so let's do that. Python manage.py make migrations. Okay. Python manage.py migrate. Okay, so we applied our migration, so we're good to go. Now let's see how we want to incorporate this into our app. So right now the app just has one index page, which is showing all the movies, right? Okay. So what I want to do is I want to create a login page where we'll accomplish both the registration and the logging in. All right, so let's go inside of our templates folder here, and let's just create a login template. HTML. Okay. I'll put some HTML in here, and then we'll just call this guy login reg. Okay. Now I'm going to need a form, right? A registration form. So let's create that. In fact, up on top here, I'm just going to say that this is the registration form so we don't get confused. Form. Okay, cool. Now I'm going to have some action. What action do we want to use? What's that?
No.
Yeah, process is kind of like, it's a little vague. So I want to kind of be explicit on what I'm doing. What if I do /users, meaning that like I'm trying to create a new user, something like that. All right. Method is be what? Post. Okay, let's make sure that we put that CSRF token in there so that Django doesn't growl at us. CSRF, there's that. Okay, now I'm going to put in some inputs here. So we'll have first name, last name. Okay. Then I want email. You might wonder why I'm not doing type email. What's up with that? The only reason why I'm not going to do it is so that we can better test our validations. Because what's going to happen if I put type email is that the HTML will actually try to stop us from submitting a form if we do like a poorly formed email address. Okay, but I want the HTML to let it through so that we can really test our validations. All right, let's keep going. We also want the password, right? Password. So this is going to be actually of type password. Does anybody know what that does when we do that? So it's just going to turn the characters into those little bullet points, right? Yeah, exactly. So we'll say this is password. Input group here. We'll say this is password confirmation. And again, that's going to be of type password. But here we'll say this is PW confirm. So I think that's what I called it in my validations, right? Okay. Finally, we need to have a submit button. So there's that. Cool. Now, currently, this isn't hooked up to any of our routes, so we're going to need to do that, right? I need to go into my urls.py and create a new route. So let's just do it up here. We'll say path login. It's going to be views. What do we want to call it? We'll call it login page. Okay. Now, we haven't created that in our views.py, so we're going to need to do that, right? So let's go into our views.py. And let's just come down here. We'll say def login page takes in the request, right? All this is going to do is just really render this page. It's not going to, I mean, at least for now, we don't really have to attach anything to it, right? I can just simply render out and be done with it. So let's say return render. I always need to pass in the request. And then the template's going to be called login.html. Okay? So now when we go to our login page, or localhost 8000 /login, it should render out that HTML page that we just created. Alright, so let's run the app. So python manage.py run server. Cool. I'm just going to go to the login here. 8000. Okay. There's our beautiful, well-styled login form. Very proud of this. Okay, excellent. So we've got this form. We still have to make a route that can handle the form submission, right? Okay, so we're almost there. So let's do that. So let's come over here to our URLs again, and we'll say we wanted to have a route just called users, right? And we'll say that's going to be views.createUser. Okay? I haven't created this function yet, so before I save it, I'm going to go back in and create it so that I don't stop my server, basically. All right? So let's go into the views here. Come down here to create user. Def create user. Ooh. That's great. Request. Okay? So this is going to be receiving a form submission, right? From my page. Now, how do I get a hold of that data that came in through the form? Request.host. Yes. I heard somebody say session, right? Did I hear that somewhere? So it's not going to be coming from the session, right? It's strictly coming from the form that's being submitted. So I'm just going to save a reference to it. I'm just going to say post equals request.post. Okay? Now what we want to do is we basically want to run this through our validator to make sure that the user hasn't messed something up, right? You guys remember kind of how we do that? So I'm going to create, again, a variable called errors, and this time I'm going to set it equal to whatever my validator function returns. Okay? A second ago, I just realized, wait, we haven't imported our user class, right? Okay, we need it. So let's import it. All right, movie, comma, user. Mm-hmm.
Objects on the right to like user class.
Correct. Yeah, we didn't do that actually. Good point. Let's go fix that before we go any further. So yeah, we created this user manager, but we just need to connect it to our actual user, right? Good catch, one. So let's come down here. And what we're going to do is we're going to add this other field called objects, which is basically going to overwrite, I should say, the object's property on a user object. Okay. And then what we're going to do is we're going to invoke our user manager class, meaning we're creating a new instance of that class. Very great catch on that. Okay, cool. So we'll say errors is going to equal user.objects, and then I'm going to call this basic validator function. What am I going to pass into the basic validator? Post, because post is my post data, right? And what it's asking for is the post data, so that's whatever came from the form. Okay. All right. Now, if we had some kind of an error, what I want to do is I want to add those to our messages in the same exact way that we did yesterday. So that part won't really be any different. So I'll say something like, if len of errors is greater than 0, what that means is that I have at least one key value pair in that errors dictionary, right? Okay. So what I want to do if that's the case is I want to iterate through all those errors. So I can say for error in errors dot values. Does anyone know what errors dot values is giving me? All of the values that are inside of my dictionary, right? It's excluding the keys because in this case I don't really need the keys. All I need is what were the messages that I just passed through, right? So then what I'm going to do is I'm going to say messages.error. I'm going to call this function and I'm going to pass it in the request first. I also have to do that. And then the second thing is what was the actual value. So we'll say we'll pass in error. Then what I want to do is I want to basically redirect the person because they failed, right? So I want to redirect them actually back to the login page. Okay? Everyone okay with this part? Sort of? Kind of? All right, so if we get past this, what that means is that essentially they've passed our validations, right? They're okay. Let's go ahead and drop them into our database, right? So how am I going to do that? Anyone? Don't look at me, man. No. User.objects, right? .create. Cool. All right. Now let's specify all the different fields that we've got. So we've got like first name, right? Equals. So we'll say post and then first name. Okay, maybe I'll duplicate this and just change it. Last name. Okay, email equals post email. All right. What else do we want? Password. Do I want to store the password like this in my database, like exactly the way that they gave it to me? So if they type in password 123. Is that how I want to store it in my database? That's pretty terrible security practice, right? So if somebody cracks my database, which hopefully they won't, but let's say they get into my database and they find all these plain text passwords. So if Bob Smith used this password over here on my site, chances are he might have used that password on some other site. So now I know, maybe I know Bob's passwords for all his sites now because I just got into this one database, right? So we want to use something called hashing. Does anybody know what that means when we're password hashing?
Checking it.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, it's giving it some protection, right? What was that?
Scrambling.
Scrambling, yeah. I mean, it's basically like the idea is we have this one-way function which can go from some input to something else, but we can't really get back in the other direction, right? So I can't go from a hashed password and go back and get the actual plain text password, okay? But if somebody provides the same thing when they log in as they did when they registered, then I should know, okay, it is the correct user because it is the same password they're providing. Okay? I just can't go in the reverse direction. I can't say, I've got this person's hashed password, let me get their plain text from it. Doesn't work that way, right? Okay, cool. So we're going to use a library to help us out with this. And the library is called Bcrypt.
Also, like from a practical purposes, like the hashing occurred from like an HTML JavaScript level, because like there's actually something unhashed, right?
You're sending what unhashed?
The password. Like they're making the request with the unhashed password, and then once we receive it, then we're hashing. Honestly, this is putting it in a normal setting. Usually, it's the front end where we actually should hash it.
You know, generally you don't want to be trusting the front end to do very much. The more you trust the front end, because the front end can more easily be modified or hacked than the back end.
Yeah.
Back end we have more control over. So yeah, what we're going to do is we're going to install this library called Bcrypt. Okay, so I've still got my activated environment here. How am I going to do that? Pip install, right? And then we'll say Bcrypt. Okay, and now all we need to do is we're going to want to hash this password once we're creating the user, right? So in the platform here, you can see in the login reg assignment here, shows you how you can do that. So actually, where was it? I'm sorry, it was in the Bcrypt assignment. Reading is where it is. So all we need to do is we have to import the Bcrypt library. And then we're going to hash the password by saying bcrypt.hashpw. Okay? So we can try this in the shell first if we want, just to make sure everything's working the way that we want it to. So let me just copy this code here. This right here. I'll just open up a Python terminal. So we'll just say Python here. And then I'm going to say import bcrypt. Okay, and then let me drop in that. Okay, and then let's just print out hash 1. Okay, so you'll notice here, hopefully you guys can see this okay, but what I was trying to hash was just the word test. That's it. So 4 characters long, and then you can see what got generated by that, right? This really gnarly long hash that looked nothing like what we gave it. Okay? So this is ultimately what we want to enter into our database. Okay? So that if somebody did get inside of our database, they don't know that that person's password was test. Okay? Let me run this one more time just for something I'm curious about. So let's say hash 2, we're hashing the exact same thing, right? And then I'm going to say print hash 2. Interesting, right? Did you guys notice how these 2 hashes are not the same? So the reason is that when we hash them, we actually are also adding something called a salt. Okay? And depending on when each user was created, that salt is going to be a little bit different. So even though these 2 had the exact same password, they both had test as their password, what it'll look like in the database will be a little bit different. So we wouldn't even know that Bob and Joe both had the same password because their hashed versions are going to look different. Okay? But Bcrypt is able to basically pull out the salt part and still be able to determine if it's the correct password. So it's doing a ton of work for us so that you guys can basically just focus on, does this password hash match with whatever I've got in the database, right? All right. So let's get out of there. We know that our hashing stuff is working well. Okay. So what I need to do up here in views is I need to import Bcrypt, right? Because I'm going to hash this password. Let's go up here, import Bcrypt. Cool. And then when I save the password, let's go ahead and hash it up. So again, I've got this code here that we can use. Let me just get rid of some of this here. Okay, so we're hashing the password, and what am I going to put in here instead of test? So post, and then in brackets, password, right? Okay, now I can get rid of this here. Okay, cool. So we're all set. We've created this user. One other thing we probably want to do before we, like instantly redirect the person somewhere else. What else do you think we want to do? Let's say we've successfully created the user. What then? How am I going to know who this user is once that user gets to my next page?
Want to give them an ID?
Yeah, so they're going to get an ID when they get inserted into the database. That'll happen automatically. Good. Yeah, let's add their user ID to the session so that way when they get to the next page, I know who this person is, right? All right. So what we can do is we can say request.session, and then the key that I'm trying to set is the user ID, and then I'm going to set that equal to user.id. Okay, so that's the ID of this new user that we just created. Okay. Now that this is done, what I can do is I can go ahead and redirect the person away. So let's say we want them to go to that main page that had all of our movies on it. Well, I can just redirect them to /, right? Redirect /. Okay. And then inside that / route, what if I wanted to, say, display this person's name or something? Right. How would I go about doing that?
Session user ID.
So all I'm saving in the session right now is the user ID. So I would actually need to go and get that user object, right? Yeah.
Like the user objects gets
Mm-hmm.
ID is equal to request session ID.
Yeah. That sounds good. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to do a couple things real quick. I just want to show you guys how can we prevent this user from accessing, say, our index page.
If session not
Sounds like you kind of have it reversed.
Oh, yeah. Not
Right,
in
if
session.
user ID not in request.session, that means that I haven't saved a user ID in session yet, right? So I can say something like this, if, and then I'll put in quotes, user ID not in request.session. Okay, that means the person is not logged in, so I can just redirect to / login. Okay, because I want them to log in. Okay, let's test that out real quick, make sure that that mechanism is working right. So if I go here to the main index page, my site crashes. Oh, I wasn't running the server, was I? Dang it. All right. Run server. All right, let's try that one more time. So we're going to the index page here. We got redirected, right? And the reason why is because I did not have a user ID inside my session, right? So that's working well. Cool. All right. So if we get past that point inside of our code, that means that the person is logged in, right? Because we're not redirecting them yet. So what I can do is I can add that person to my context here. I can say here, user is going to be what? So it'll be user.objects.get, and then I'm going to say the ID is what? Anyone know? All right, let's be super explicit just so that there's no confusion here. Let's say user ID equals request.session and then user ID, right? So now down here I can simply say ID equals user ID, right? Because I've got this variable that's holding on to my ID for me. Very good. So if I provide this to my template, what can I do with it? I can easily show that person's first name on the index page, right? If I want to say, hey, Bob, or whatever, I could do that. So let's just do it. In our index page, let's come up here and just go, we'll just change validations. So we'll say, hi. I'll do my double mustache tags, right? And then I'll say user.firstname. And then exclamation point. Okay, cool. All right. So that's all good. Let's test it out, right? Let's try creating a user. So I think first what we'll do is we'll try to create a user with some bad information or just like some empty fields, and let's see how that goes, right? The other thing that I need to do before we even do that, though, actually, no, let's just do it, sorry. Because we're not showing our errors yet, right? Okay. So obviously we're getting redirected right back to login, but the user doesn't know what just happened. I try to register. What's going on, right? So let's display those errors in the same way that we did on the index page for creating movies. I'm just going to grab this code here because I don't want to type it out again. Just be careful about cutting and or copying and pasting. Sometimes it'll get you. All right, so let's try that again. Whoops, that's the wrong thing. Okay. What did I just do? What's that? Oh, you're absolutely right. Jeez. Oh. Very nice. It's like they piled up, right? Okay, here we go. So that's what I was expecting, right? It's just some little set here. Please provide your password. Okay, so let's provide a couple things. Let's provide an email that we know is not right. So I'll put Bob there. Invalid email address, right? We did get that. That's kind of nice. Cool. Please provide your password. So let's provide some working information. So I'll say, whoa, can't even spell my name right. Jeez. Okay. Whoa. Look at that. Nobody's excited about us being logged in? All right. So maybe we also want to be able to log out, right? All right. So how can we do that? Let's create like a little link or something like that, right? On our template. Go like this. Get rid of that one. So here in our index.html, I could put up here, jeez. Up here, I can just create a little link for us to log out. So a tag, and then our href will just be log out. Log out like that. All right. And then we have to always create a route for this, right? So you're not done just because you've created a link. We still have to add this to our urls.py. Path logout views.logout. Okay. And then the other thing we need to do inside the views is actually write a function to handle our logging out, right? So I'll come down here, I'll just say def logout, takes in the request, And then what? Does anyone know how I can clear out the session? Yeah, it actually has a method called clear. So I can say request.session.clear. Oh. Okay. And then the next line, again, I'm just going to redirect them back to the login page. So say return redirect to login. Okay, let me go back and save my urls.py. Let's go here. Let me refresh this page. Cool, I've got this guy. Okay, so I logged out. Now, if I try to go back to my dashboard, or my index route, I should say, still doesn't work, right? What if I wanted to show an error that they need to log in or something like that? Could I do that? How would I do that? Inside my views.py, when we were doing the index page here, so if I determined that they weren't logged in, I could add something to my messages, right, and show them that. So I could do something like this, messages.error, takes in the request, and we'll say, you must log in to see this. It's an exclusive page, right? Go back here. What is it? Oh, there it is. Jeez. Okay. So if they tried to go to a page that we didn't want them to access, we could show them a message here. All right.
Are you going to make the login page? Or?
Of course, yeah, but this is why I wanted to split it up into two parts, because now that you guys are all falling asleep, Brian, I'm not going to be like, all right, now let's learn how to log in. That's this afternoon. Part 2 coming up. That's the registration part. All right. Any questions?
And that's why you have to have that done.
Yeah, you can see why this is so important to get this together before the exam, because in the exam you're going to have other things that you need to be concerned about. You don't want to have to be fumbling around with this. You want to make sure that it works. I mean, it's possible you might have to slightly adjust your code a little bit, but generally, like, the framework of your login registration, you could carry it over, you know.
They should teach us that first, like the first place.
Teach you what first?
Yeah.
Login reg? But you would all leave and never come back. If you knew, if I tried to show you that without you guys having a handle on the fundamentals, you'd be like, well, this program isn't for me. That'd be terrible.
What time are we going to meet up?
3 o'clock.
Perfect.
Yep.
Okay, perfect.
Cool.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Oh.